In this session, we hosted a roundtable event to discuss recent announcements from Microsoft Inspire, including, amongst other things, hybrid working, Teams telephony, and Windows 365. Joining me were members of Wavenet, Mike Korkidakis, Head of Distribution, Rachel Deuchar, Head of Product and Presales UCaaS, Nikki Gubb, Remote Engineering Team Leader, as well as both Jamie and Kirsty from our marketing team at Risc. Our focus is around cloud services, primarily helping customers around security, productivity, and what we call agility, so moving services into the cloud.
Hi, thanks for joining us. You're listening to Straight Talking 365 with Mark, Lawton and guests.
I think, as I said in the little chat we had going, I was amazed at some of the questions that partners were asking at the event last week around, can Teams replace a PBX? I think, oh my God, where have they been for the last 18 months? Have they not been paying attention? So just thinking about Inspire as a whole, Microsoft very handily produced this book of news, it's called, which sounds slightly biblical, but they basically, all of the announcements that they're going to cover in the 2 days is summarized in this book of news. And that covers lots of product areas, Azure and Dynamics, and also their kind of sustainability commitments and all that kind of stuff, but also covers Microsoft 365, obviously, which Teams fits into part of. So if you boil it down to what we're interested in as two organizations, it's that Microsoft 365 business and the Teams part of that primarily, isn't it? So I think if you drill down, and we're quite lucky as a modern workplace partner, we're tagged as. So we get invited to, there's a pre-day on the Tuesday afternoon, which is just focused on Microsoft 365 and Teams. So there's some quite useful insights in there. You get a lot of detail around, we've had a great year. We've gone from 44 million active users to 145 million active users, and we're just going to go further. So I think, Microsoft's view of the opportunity is just more of that. But where Microsoft want to take it this financial year is, they kept saying it's the year of Teams Phone, which again for us is obviously great news. So they think there's still a massive opportunity to bring voice into Teams. They call it Teams Phone. That's obviously the license. They also talked about Teams Rooms as well, being a massive focus as well. And I think they also talk quite a lot about across the whole the 2 days and the pre-day about Windows 365. So that's probably the number one announcement. Probably the significant one was the cloud PC announcement. So Windows 365 in the cloud alongside Windows 11. But you'll find this with Inspire that generally they don't announce anything out of the blue that you're not expecting, because they tend to sort of drip it out a few months before. So obviously Windows 11 we already knew about. We knew there was a cloud PC coming, but we just didn't have any detail. So that's, for us, again, Windows 365 is something Microsoft are going to be pushing out to their customers through partners. So we need to think about, what's the opportunity for us as Wavenet Risc, and will it work well with Teams Link, for example, is obviously the number one question. So just finally, and then I'll shut up for a minute. The other area that, from a modern workplace point of view, they really banging the drum about is this product called Viva, which you may or may not have come across, but it's Microsoft's employee experience platform. So it brings together training, it brings together employee communications, brings together teams into a complete employee platform, and it's meant to help with managing remote workers and keeping people connected and all that kind of stuff. It's still early days into what the impact is of Viva and how successful they're going to be, and whether it will scale down to smaller organizations. When we talk about smaller, we're talking about sub 300 users, but Viva is the other one that they spent a lot of time pushing through partners.
You mentioned remote workers there. The big buzzword from Inspire was hybrid workers, wasn't it?
Yes, it was hybrid. Yeah, that's
the new buzzword.
And I think if you look at what most of our customers, thinking about, Alzheimer's, again, as using them as an example, is, they're obviously starting to move people back to the office now. So they've put Teams meeting room systems in to the office in the last couple of weeks, so they can support people in the office and remote in a single platform. They've got Teams links, so they're sorted already.
Uh,
Yeah, this sort of the Teams phone and having your phone number follow you rather than being tied to your desk. Again, it seems strange us talking about that as if it's something new, because obviously we've been doing it for a couple of years at least. But there's still a lot of partners in the Microsoft world that haven't woken up to that, and haven't seen the opportunity or have kind of toyed with business voice direct from Microsoft, and maybe have done a bit of direct routing with some other telco that just provides DDI numbers, but they haven't really sort of embraced it, and that Microsoft, being Microsoft, want to push those add-on licenses like phone system into customers, because it's more revenue, isn't it, and stickier. So you can see they're pushing that. The other, again, for us thinking about Wavenet and Risc, the other key announcement, which wasn't really announced at Inspire, it was kind of announced alongside, was Teams 2.0. I'll get it out in a minute. So the kind of revamping of the Teams app, it's going to be lighter.
Yeah.
It's going to be bolted into Windows 11.
Yeah.
So Windows 11 will include Teams 2.0 as a native client. So again, for us thinking about our customers and where they're going to next, then that's an important one as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. And I think that's kind of in line with even our trend as well, as we're developing and redeveloping the product. We always try to have that synergy with Microsoft and how our product releases. So yeah, very, very much in line with one another. And yeah, I think obviously the kind of the year of Teams phone, we've moved away from the year of Teams and the year of Teams phone. We're going to see a lot more of that. Even moving into the the collaborative apps piece as well. And we saw kind of the Dynamics and 365 integrated into Teams piece. That's quite a big one as well. How that's going to look. You're starting to enter that whole space of moving kind of almost like contact center level features and integrations natively into the Teams environment, which is it's very interesting to see. So it opens up some very interesting conversations for direct routing suppliers like ourselves, doesn't it?
Yeah, Dynamics. Yeah, as you say, Dynamics is a big focus for them as well, isn't it? And surfacing all of that sort of Dynamics data in Teams out of the box. But yeah, that seemed to be a big area of interest for partners as well. Microsoft are very good at saying, this is our strategy for the next year, and these are the 6 key areas we're going to focus on, and then everything they do kind of ripples down from that. And they put it under these 3 headings called processes, people, and places. And then underneath each one, they've got 2 focus areas, and they call them sales plays. So I don't know if you've come across sales plays before, but they're effectively packaged slide deck for customers, recording of demos and all that sort of stuff. So they've got, under process, they've got transition to cloud. So again, that's nothing new, is it? Moving devices to the cloud. But obviously the big one in that transition to cloud is is Windows 365. So you've put all of your email in the cloud, you've got Teams in the cloud, you've got your Azure AD, security in the cloud. Now put your Windows desktop in the cloud as well. And the other one under that processes is enabling the frontline. So obviously part of Teams is this frontline worker. So this kind of low complexity SKU where you can kind of give your information worker type employees access to Teams and all of that information as well. So that's the frontline workers. And then under people, they've got modernize endpoints. So that's again all about Windows 11, really. So that's all about bringing people up to date. If they're still using Windows 7, then they shouldn't be. They should be on Windows 10. But now they should be thinking about how they move to Windows 11. And then the second one under people is this employee experience, which is basically Viva, which is their sort of employee platform. And then under places, so this is all about being able to work from anywhere, modernize communications. So that's the heading. And then under that is clearly the main thing there is Teams phone. So bringing your number to phone. And then the final one under places is what they call hybrid meetings. So again, that's all about Teams room systems and all these kind of new funky devices that they've got that can recognize different people's voices in a room, and these intelligent speakers and all that that kind of stuff. So I did actually take some notes here, so I'm just looking here. That one of the things that they came up with is this voice is the human connection.
Yeah,
that sounds a bit kind of highfalutin, but basically what they're saying is, the missing part of this, connecting people together is voice. So if people are remote, you need to be able to at least talk to each other. So as I said, they tend to put we want customers to be using Teams phone because that brings more revenue because it's an additional license, and actually this is why they need it, because that's the human connection. So that was quite an interesting insight. I mean, from our point of view, again, the numbers, as always with Microsoft, and I've used this before, Mike, so excuse me, this they mentioned they're seeing 2 years worth of digital transformation, or they saw 2 years of digital transformation every 2 months during lockdown.
Yeah.
So what they're saying there is that I guess what they forecast and predicted customers would be doing over the next 2 years, they did it in 2 months, and then in the next 2 months they did it again. So which is why obviously Teams has exploded from 44 million in April 2020 to 145 million in this now, and I'm sure it's probably gone up since then, but that was they're still using that 145 million daily active users as the benchmark.
That's crazy stats, isn't it? It just goes to show how well businesses have been able to adapt to different types of working, with people like Risc IT and Wavenet helping them, with the hybrid piece and all the remote working, and we still don't really know what that's going to look like either. So, it needs to be very flexible, doesn't it, around that piece?
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows exactly what it's going to look like, do they? And funnily enough, we were having this discussion on our internal call this morning about what our customers going to do. But I think certainly all the customers I've spoken to, they're not in a massive rush to get everybody back in one place. No. I think they're sensibly giving people the choice. And I've read some stuff from one of the merchant banks, I can't think which one it was, in the US, was saying, we want everybody back in the office by September, full stop, because they're worried about losing the sort of culture that they get in the organisation. My work works with a big manufacturing company that's global, and again, they're saying, look, we want people back in the office. Why they want them back in the office? I don't know. If people are as effective or more effective working remotely, then why? It kind of begs the question around trust and management and all that HR stuff, which is obviously not. That's another podcast, I think. But yeah, I think for most of our customers, and again, using Alzheimer's as a great example, their expectation is that the majority of people will be in the office a couple of days a week here and there. So they've turned it into touchdown. So people rock up, book a desk, turn up, plug in, and they've got everything they need in one place, or they book a meeting room. They're not expecting everybody to come back en masse into the office, but they've still got the same office. They still need the same space because people are more spread out. But just, being able to support that mix of people. I'm looking in here because I'm in a meeting room, but people in a meeting room or at home or at Costa or wherever they are, Teams is great for that, isn't it? Just like we are now.
Yeah. Absolutely, and the flexibility of collaboration as well. It's just so easy to use as a collaborative tool, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Risc, because we were all fairly local, most people tended to be in the office. Not everybody. They're not all. We're not all sort of North Wales. But my background with Microsoft and then BT before that, I'm sort of used to working flexible. And I think, Mike, you're the same, aren't you? Thinking, you're down South Coast, aren't you? And the office is in Nottingham, so you don't go into the office that often, do you?
No, never know.
So
from my point of view, in terms of the hybrid working as well, looking at my team, I've got people in Chester, in Solihull, we've got people down in London. So although we might not be able to have that, like you say, that office environment and that culture, at least we can do that over a Teams conversation.
I know it does help with, and again, this is a culture change, isn't it? When we're all on this call with our video on, and that's, you don't even think about it, do you? Now, but you natural. Roll back 14 months ago, most people wouldn't put their video on. But now,
I felt like I had to do my hair and wear makeup to put my video on, and now,
and people don't care if your dog wanders past or barks, or when the postman arrives, or you kind of make it part of the it's the joy of working from home, isn't it? Kind of people, because and this is what everybody was in the same boat, weren't they?
Yeah, people are much more relaxed, I think, in front of each other now, much more you know, comfortable and to ask questions as well that, you know, people are asking how you are and actually really meaning it, I think, as well. And that's, you know, between customers and us. And I think that's nice to have that sort of informality there as well.
It certainly gives people something to talk about, doesn't it? I mean, circumstances aside, it's not, you know, how this has all come about isn't great, but yeah, I think it definitely opens up the world to talk to each other more.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
that's
go on, Mike,
that's what's. I was just going to say that's what's changed the model, though. That point that you just said, Nikki, that's exactly what's changed the model. I mean, I was obviously in, you know, prior to Teams, you know, the other Microsoft products for telephony, and you know, and then I was in Teams when kind of direct routing came out and Teams telephony started coming out, and you know, the challenge then was exactly that. It was positioning the you know, remote working hybrid model with customers, right, and trying to prove, you know, how it works, why it works. You know, the pandemic forced that, right? It forced all these organizations to have to work from home, and now it's changed to how can we enable that flexibility? How can we take these, you know, remote workers that do like the office environments and have like a collaborative and immersive experience across things like Teams? And I think that was a huge thing that came out of Inspire as well, wasn't it? It's that whole, what was there? That was another one of their buzzwords, wasn't it? It was, what was it? It was like phygital or something, wasn't it? Taking like the physical and the digital experiences. They always have something, don't they? But you know, that's what it was all about, right? Those video conferencing tools that help, you know, the in-person and sort of immersive experiences across products like this. So, I mean, that's been the hugest change for me that I've seen over the last sort of 18 months is exactly that. It's like the whole approach to these organizations is completely different now, because I'm not having to prove the model. It's all about like now how they take that model and accelerate it and input all these other things that create that same experience and that same functionality and all those things they have, but in a remote world.
Yeah, that's yeah, like you say, it's kind of second nature now. And I think if there's anything that's good that's come out of the pandemic, it's, you know, people just accepting that you can work flexibly and be at least as effective. And second benefit is that I don't have to queue at the bar anymore to go when I go to the pub. I can just order it from an app.
Right from the app. Yeah.
For me, that's you know, that's a sea change for me.
That's the
like,
takeaway.
why haven't I always done this? Well, we're queue at the bar like heathens. Yeah, I don't miss that ruck at the bar.
But do you think the fact that you know, obviously remote working is, or hybrid working as it's to be, is coming to the fore, that's been the catalyst for Windows 365 because of connectivity issues of staff working remotely?
Do you mean that everybody's now got decent broadband because they've had to?
Well, or those that haven't got fantastic broadband, you know, that people will be effectively working from dumb terminals, so it'll sort of elongate the life of machines, and therefore, you know, that's been sort of catalyst for that.
I'm going to be interested to see how this sort of goes forward marketing wise, because if we have to sort of explain to people that they have to buy the end terminal, the laptop, the workstation, how can we then justify to them that now you've actually got to buy the virtual machine on top?
Yeah, I mean, there is that, although I think the device you need to access the internet will be a lower spec. It doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles, and it can be an iPad, can't it? I think that's the kind of whole. I think it's less about connectivity, Jamie, if I'm honest. I think it's more about security. So I think it's more about, as a virtual desktop was, you know, an RDS was before it. It's all about kind of, you know, having that virtual machine in the cloud that you can't leak data out from, where you can't leave it on a train. You know, it's all kind of ring fenced and secure and standardized. So I think it's more about that than it's about IT departments being able to control that environment and not have people, you know, data everywhere.
Again, it's not groundbreaking. It's not groundbreaking technology, is it? Because they've had Azure remote machines for a while now. It's just interesting that they're now able to bring that to like an endpoint user.
I think like all of this, it's accelerated what they were planning to do. So probably Windows 365 would have been another year away, possibly something like that. So I think it's accelerated it. But I think, yeah, I mean, they still have RDS, and then they've got what's called Azure Virtual Desktop now, which was called Windows Virtual Desktop. They renamed it Azure Virtual Desktop, and you know why now? Because now they've got Windows 365. They didn't want to confuse people. But I think again, it's just an evolution of what went before. So if you look at Azure Virtual Desktop, it's complex to deploy, complex to manage. You know, you need to know way around Azure to be able to do it, whereas Windows 365 will be off the shelf standard. Here it is, so they've simplified it and made it more of a software as a service solution rather than a infrastructure as a service, which is what Azure Virtual Desktop is. But I think for us, selfishly thinking about Risc and Wavenet going forward, obviously it's important to us to think, okay, well, will that Windows 365 cloud PC? So Microsoft have said we've invented a new category. It's called the cloud PC. You could debate whether they've invented it or not, but they're going to claim it anyway. So Windows 365 is a cloud PC. How well will Teams and obviously more Teams Link work in that environment, or will they still have to run Teams locally? I don't know the answer to that yet, but that's that for us, that's something we need to figure out.
I did see also there was an interesting point with the Windows 365 clients where they had compatible agents for different operating systems. So you've got your Windows OS, your iOS, your Android OS. So I'm wondering if there's going to be some sort of Microsoft wizardry that will basically be able to allow you to connect your peripherals through, so you'll be able to use it within the cloud. That's something I'd be interested to play around with.
Yeah, certainly at the moment for most of all of our customers, we advise to run Teams locally. So this Teams 2.0 might be part of that story, because I think just reading a quick brief on it is it takes half the memory, half the processing power, is twice as fast. So you think actually you can probably run it on lower spec devices now. So rather than it killing your i7 PC, it'll probably run on a more basic PC. Like Jamie suffers with his PC's always grinding to a halt. So, Mike, I don't know whether what you think about that. Have you got your head around Teams 2.0 yet?
Yeah, a little bit. It'll be interesting to see sort of how it progresses and what comes from it. But you can certainly tell that there's a lot of focus going into that. And I'm very keen to see how certain things come out of it. Collaborative apps could be quite a powerful tool as well for even us on the direct routing side. It does open up, a bit of a different platform, and it just it does remove some of those barriers, doesn't it? So be interesting space to watch for sure.
As always with Microsoft, it wouldn't be inspired without some other stats that they're throwing out at us. So I'll just pick this up from the again, this is from the pre-day around telephony. 18% cloud telephony growth this financial year, which doesn't sound a lot to me. I think that's cloud telephony in general, so including Teams Link and 8x8 and all of these traditional. But it says 49% of SMBs are planning to invest in unified comms in the next financial year.
That does sound quite low to me as well. Both stats, 18 and the 49, I think, sound quite low.
Yeah, I was going to say
based on the conversations we're having with customers.
Yeah, you would think, well, you'd expect the other 51% have already invested in UC, wouldn't you?
That's what I was just going to say. I was going to say, is that 49% of people who haven't, or 49% of everyone? Because surely loads of people already haven't they?
Yeah, probably.
Or are they just really behind? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk around this, though, hasn't there, at the moment, about, companies still almost hiding a little bit behind the COVID piece and not offering the customer service they need to or could do. I think some of the problem as well, based on those stats that you said about Mark, is just customers just don't know what to do at the moment. They're sort of in a bit of a sort of strange place where they're not sure whether they go or not, because I don't think they know whether they're going to have the offices that they've got at the end of this, what if all their work is going to be remote, etc., if they're going to be hybrids. I think they're still sort of a bit undecided.
I think part of it as well, when we were saying earlier about those, or was it Goldman?
It was Goldman Sachs, wasn't it? Yeah, that's who I was thinking of. Thank you, Kirsty.
And they said that they just want to get everyone back to the office. I think part of it is that if they don't realise that like we've been saying, that this was the catalyst for all these changes haven't happened purely because of that. They were coming anyway, and then we had a pandemic, which meant that they had to come sooner. And I just think that a lot of people don't realise that that's the case, and so they think that they can go straight back to the office and just carry on as they were, and like, oh yeah, we don't need to waste our money investing in all these other things because it worked fine for the last 20 years, so we'll just keep doing that. And I wonder if that's part of it, in that people don't want to change, and they think that they can just go back and carry on as they were, and so that might also be why they've been a bit rubbish during the pandemic, because they've not invested in the technology that they need, because they don't think it's going to last for any longer than the pandemic.
Or they've
I
been
think-
waiting for months, like it's only going to last another month, and then it's going to
Yeah.
last another month, and then it's going to last another month.
Oh yeah, I mean,
So-
when we went into lockdown originally, we thought that we'd be out of lockdown in like April, didn't we? We thought it was going to be like 2 or 3 weeks. Here we are, 18 months later.
I know. I think you're spot on, Kirsty. Actually, I do think a lot of the customers that we talk to are kind of hedging their bets and kicking the decision into the long grass, and just maybe, a couple of them have re-signed for another 12 months for their existing telecoms provider, and you think, well, they obviously haven't taken. They've just kind of kicked that decision to 12 months down the line, really. But as you say, they'll come back to the office and they'll be in the same boat that they were before and not be able to support remote workers. So, unless everybody comes back to the office and it's exactly how it was before, then they won't have the infrastructure to support it.
That's around though, isn't it, as well? For somebody like Goldman Sachs, that's very much about the culture of their workplace. There's other verticals that would absolutely embrace hybrid working and have done, and probably see it as a benefit and would carry on doing that going forwards, whereas certain verticals won't.
Yeah, I think also.
But they need to change in the future because, there's also the side of this about retaining your staff, isn't there? And, protecting staff and giving them flexibility. And if you've seen the benefits of hybrid working or remote working, a lot of people want to hold on to that.
I've had conversations as well with people where they've said that their board is like considerably older than the average age of the employees, and so for a lot of
Are you
them,
thinking about risk?
No, no.
Thanks,
So
Kirsty. I mean, I know I'm older than you.
trying to get people that are of a different generation. I'm trying to say this in a really non-ageist way.
Don't worry.
A different generation to embrace hybrid working and all the new technology can be more difficult than in our organisation. We've got a very young board that are really great. And
Thanks. You have to say that because I'm here. It's not necessarily an age thing. I think it's a kind of it's a trust thing, and it is a trust thing, isn't it? You kind of either trust your people to do the job wherever they are, or you don't. I think culture does come into it a little bit, maybe with somebody like Goldman Sachs, where they're all kind of in the city and in New York or London, or going to the pub after, and that kind of culture. Especially, I think Goldman Sachs made the point that they were worried about the graduates coming in this year, and I guess it's the same as joining a uni and not ever seeing anybody else from the uni, isn't it? So there is a bit of that, I think, to be honest. But again, that doesn't mean it's an all or nothing. It's not an all or nothing decision, is it? It's a bit of both, I think, and that's got to be the answer for most of our customers. And interestingly, a message just popped up on Teams actually from one of our sales guys. We're getting a lot of interest now. I think as people are thinking, right, okay, we need to be going back to the office, we need to kick the offices out, but we'll still need that flexibility. Lots of our existing customers who've maybe been kind of hedging their bets are now saying, yeah, now's the time we want to talk to you about Teams Link. So from our point of view, that's great that they've kind of woken up and they need to do something now.
Yeah, and we're not talking about small businesses here, are we? We're talking about, well-known names
Yes.
businesses of decent size that are experiencing this. So 18 months in, they really should now have something in place.
Yeah, just the final stat I got on this little thing, following on from the 49% of SMBs planning, it was a 6 times uptake of Teams Business Voice. Now, I'm not sure whether that's the last 12 months or that's what they're forecasting. I'll need to check that. But either way, that's a 6-fold increase in Microsoft seeing customers take voice as part of Teams, whether that's using the Microsoft calling plan or direct routing with Wavenet as an example, which is obviously our lead offering. Either way, they see that as the next step.
Yeah, and I also think the piece around the third-party app, so you're going to be able to change and see the presence across the Teams platforms if you were putting something like a contact center on. I think that's quite key.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, that's
How will that be different to what our customer sees? That mean you can reflect it back from the Teams client into the Wavenet portal.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
And onto the contact center. And I think that will be, it's not a deal breaker for customers, but I think there'll be customers that may have sort of thought twice about moving across the Teams Link for pieces like that. So I think it is significant.
From a support point of view as well, that is something we're asked about regularly as well. It's very much in demand, so it'll be interesting to get that rolled out to those people.
Yeah, so you don't have to set your presence in 2 places.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, I think that's a massive game changer, definitely for the agent supervisor. The Teams Link Pro stuff, definitely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it opens up that platform as well for the more advanced contact center pieces as well. That's always been the gap in kind of where Teams was heading, and I mean our product fills that gap for more like a basic level requirement, but as we've kind of expanded into that integrations with your omni-channel contact centers, and it starts to tick that box, it does truly open up. Having those pieces truly opens up Teams to it doesn't restrict it to certain verticals or certain customer sizes. It truly opens up that platform to essentially anyone, and that's big. It's very big.
Just finally, from my point of view, and I think I mentioned this in terms of the overall priorities for Microsoft as a company for the kind of small and medium business customers. So these 3 questions here: why Microsoft 365 Cloud? How do we secure your business and work from anywhere? And how do you deploy advanced communication? So you can see the focus overall is to lead with Teams, sell Microsoft 365 Business Premium, which is obviously our, again, as a Microsoft Gold partner, that's our lead offering, because that kind of includes everything that we need other than the voice, other than the phone system, and then Microsoft Business Voice. So this just shows sort of how high up on out of the top 3 priorities for Microsoft for the next financial year, for their non-enterprise customers, Business Voice is one of them. And Teams is one of the others. So yeah, you can see from that point of view. Back to my original point, we're in the right part of the market, aren't we?
Yeah, I think the sustainability piece is interesting. I know it's not necessarily fitting into the area that we're looking at, but I think it's interesting that they're making quite a big statement around that. I think there's businesses that will be thinking about things like that, and more so as we go forward.
Yeah, I wrote down sustainability here, but then I didn't write any of the detail. So I don't know if anybody else picked up exactly what they were proposing to do. Is it just about green data centers and things like that?
It's going to be to help companies measure and manage carbon emissions, set sustainability goals, and take actions that are required, etc. Some of it is around the data centers and the DCs. So yeah, there's quite a lot around that. And then that fed into also what you just said about the industry specific verticals, etc. So sustainability, non-profit, manufacturing, financial, etc.
Yeah, because they did list some pretty big, well-known organisations, didn't they? That they're kind of trying that with to make them sort of, carbon neutral by specific dates. And when they went through it, it's quite incredible stuff, to be fair.
I think it's important, and I think they've also put quite a lot of support around the non-profit side of that as well, which I also think is important. The numbers they were putting out around that piece was quite significant.
And obviously, from your point of view, Mike, and I'm looking at you because you're on my screen here. So Teams Link 2.0, is there anything you can kind of share on that yet? Because I guess that's what's going to keep Wavenet ahead of the game.
Not much, not a great deal I can share sort of publicly yet, but obviously, as we always try to align ourselves with certain Microsoft releases, and Rachel will know firsthand as well that as we continue down that sort of especially in the the true sort of UCaaS space, we see the gaps and we understand the gaps that exist in Teams Link as a product. The nice thing about direct routing has always been the fact that for organizations like us, we can develop things to sort of plug those gaps. And as we've expanded and as Teams Telephony's expanded, those gaps that do exist against some of the more traditional sort of, PBX solutions, contact center solutions, we've taken note of a lot of that stuff, especially over the last sort of 18 months, to understand how we can present a product that, right now we fill a lot of gaps, but we don't fill all of them. So it's really about sort of, taking a product to market that is going to fill a lot more of those, things like, just to cover off a few, like those contact center features, like omni-channel, like things like true CRM integration, which is why sort of the collaborative apps piece is interesting. But that's only interesting on the dynamic side coming out of Inspire. But, you know, we have a lot of other things, a lot of other sort of, you know, CRM integrations that do exist. And this is all vital stuff for organizations, especially now as, you know, that landscape has changed. You know, features that we might have had in development previously, they've kind of changed due to the pandemic, because we're realizing, you know, there's certain priorities and certain, you know, priority features that are more relevant to organizations right now than, you know, some of the nice to haves that we were developing. So, yeah, I can't share a great deal about sort of,
Sure.
you know, how it's going to look, but yeah, you know, leveraging off of our already existing, you know, redundant solution, you know, the plan is to kind of take that to a little bit of the next level as well. And of course, you know, continue to expand things like the international capabilities, which is obviously where you know, Microsoft themselves aren't massively focusing, because for them it's very different, because they have to form these sort of, you know, telco relationships in country. It's a bit different for them. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things, but I can't share too much detail,
Okay.
but I can a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And obviously, for some of those, you've relied on Microsoft delivering some of their features as well, haven't you? I think, despite the fact they came out, I think probably 18 months ago, and said that Teams was now feature comparative with Skype, it wasn't until about a month ago.
Yeah, agreed,
but I think they're pretty much there now, aren't they?
Yeah, well, like I say to people all the time, that is kind of the advantage of direct routing, right? Is we have all the benefits of Microsoft are obviously continuing to make loads of investment into Teams, bringing out new features to Teams. You know, we have the benefit of all the native Teams features, but then everything we're doing on top of that is, you know, that's in addition to what Microsoft are doing. So, you know, it is a very, very powerful story, because you have organizations like us that are just focusing on, you know, those telephony features and that development in amongst all the native features that Microsoft release through the Teams app. So it is very nice.
Slightly conscious of time, guys. I think we've probably covered quite a lot there, unless there's anything else you want to raise from the session.
I don't want to start a whole new conversation, but did they have any talk about like accessibility? Like working from home and remote working has been really great if they've needed help with accessibility and things like that.
They did talk about perhaps not accessibility in quite the way that you mean, but they did talk about using Windows 365 as an example, making that accessible for people who were less fortunate to have, you know, incredible broadband connections, or were using satellite connections instead. So perhaps not inclusive accessibility wise in the way that you mean, but in terms of inclusive and making accessible to everybody, that was certainly one way of going about it.
Connecting people.
Connecting people, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't mention how awesome it was that Elon Musk was putting all their satellites up in the sky to connect people from remote locations. They didn't mention that, funnily enough.
No.
But yes, I know what you mean. Brilliant. Is that a wrap? Our focus is around cloud services, primarily helping customers around security, productivity, and what we call agility. So moving services into the cloud.
Thanks for joining us. You're listening to Straight Talking 365 with Mark, Lawton and guests.